Well, two students from Grant High School are counting their blessings after a major vehicle accident almost took both of their lives. Our Colin Vidros joins me now in the studio with more. Colin, what can you tell us?
Well, Johnny, two best friends here in Central Louisiana have shared some incredible moments together, but they never would have thought that their bond together would be stronger than the milestones they would soon face.
It happened in slow motion, even though not really. That's what it felt like.
For many, graduating from high school is the first major milestone in a young person's life.
Softball?
Well, we knew of each other before softball, but
I would say like friends through friends. When like we started like actually hanging out and stuff when we played softball together.
For best friends and Grant High School seniors Grace Maxey and Jodessa Edmondson, their bond grew stronger as time went on, from softball games to needing someone to talk to.
Our bond is kind of like no other. Like I've always prayed for that best friend, because you have best friends and they have their best friend. And I could truly say that this is like my best friend.
But on August 25th, 2024, their lives would be forever changed. An impaired driver struck both Grant High students in their vehicle and caused critical injuries and a totaled car as a result. The impact was said to have been between 120 and 140 miles per hour.
So it was 9:44. I was completing a painting, and my iPhone tells me that Virginia Grace has been in an accident. It appears she's been in an accident.
Grace's mom, Kim, recalls seeing red lights as she took off towards the scene of the accident.
We take off running. All I see is all of her softball equipment everywhere. I see her bat, I see her glove, I see her cleats, I see her clothes strode all over the side of the road. And I'm like, where's Grace? Where's Jodessa? And I look down the hill and I see her car, and I see Grace is still in the car, Jodessa's still in the car. They're both still moving, so at least they're alive.
Their injuries kept them away from school, not knowing if they would reach that milestone of graduation.
But I'd say recovery was hard. We had our ups and downs. We had great days. We had terrible days. But like the one person that I turned to was her. Like when I needed to talk about something, she understood, because we went through it together.
But with resiliency and a fighting spirit, Grace and Jodessa, while still in recovery to this day, are lucky to be alive together, all thanks to their seatbelts.
Had they not had on their seatbelts, according to the state police, they would have been ejected from the car. They would have been killed instantly. The seatbelts saved their lives. They wouldn't be here today. I cannot express to anybody how grateful I am to have these two girls, and for the personnel who attended to them, to the doctors, to the nurses. We're extremely grateful. They were wonderful to our girls. You couldn't ask for better care.
Seatbelt saved me and her life. Yeah, it did some damage, but I'd take the damage any day over getting ejected and not being here with my family.
sometimes it'll feel like it's about to chop your neck off and everything, and then it gets tiring to wear it. But without the seatbelt, you know, some cases aren't as lucky with the seatbelt, but I still think it's important to wear it.
Now, the girls constantly advocate for wearing seatbelts to family and friends. And today, Grace and Jodessa are walking across the stage at Grant High School's graduation as they achieve their first major milestone and a second chance at life. And Grace's mom, Kim, tells me throughout surgery and recovery, Grace and Jodessa kept a positive attitude the entire time. So what's next after graduation? Well, after additional surgery later this year, Grace will pursue a career in the medical field and Jodessa in the dental field, with the goal of surpassing more milestones than life will throw. Johnny?